Last season, the Division 2 devs introduced a new system to try and spice up the gameplay while we played the same content for the, fourth or fifth year in a row? That system was called Seasonal Modifiers. Now that we're midway through our second season of Seasonal Modifiers, I think it's time to give my verdict on whether I think they're overall a good addition or not, and why. My takes might surprise you. I want to hear your thoughts below, so put them down as we go through these. Hey agents, it's Dispatch. Welcome to the channel, where we talk about the math, builds, lore, and game design of Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Let's get stuck into it. The seasonal modifiers from the first season started off pretty rocky. First season modifiers had annoying, unavoidable status effects, hieroglyphics that you had to unencrypt in the middle of combat, a massive range indicator around your reticle that kinda helped, and unkillable enemies if you didn't move into the right range. If you aren't immediately seeing the issues, get a load of this. If you wanted to play in a group but didn't like the modifiers, TFD, man. That stands for too fucking bad. They're on and can't be turned off. So the first round of modifiers had significant problems, and I never did regular group content because I didn't want to deal with them. Now, they did have some significant damage boosts and other cool perks. It's just the drawbacks were so severe and random that it was just a ball ache to deal with. And more damage doesn't really feel like more damage when you run into a stellite coding enemy that you can't remember what you were supposed to do to actually kill them. Overall, some players liked them, but most players were turned off by them almost immediately and never bothered to try them again. But what about the modifiers for this season? Well, they made the modifiers much simpler, at least for the enemies, so it was clear what you had to do to enable the modifiers. Basically, enemies with a blacklist symbol can take away the momentum on your momentum meter, and enemies coded in red have armor regen and maybe some other perks that you don't really care about too much unless you run into a quadcopter with it on. The friendly modifiers focused on two of the most viscerally fun parts of combat in the Division 2, rate of fire and movement speed. While damage makes your numbers on screen go up, it doesn't have the same kick as go more than ever before. So the modifiers this season are improved in every single way. Yay, video over, right? Wrong, bucko. There are some systemic issues with modifiers in general as a concept that I'd like to tackle. I think, overall, they make the game worse. Pretty big claim, but let's see why. First, the mods this season are really fun. What's the problem with that? Well, having them go away is going to suck. After playing Golden Bullet, I actually prefer the modifiers this season more than Golden Bullet. Faster movement speed and more reliable rate of fire increases are great. Are they going to be able to follow this up next season with something better? I highly doubt it. Movement speed and rate of fire, as I already said, are two of the most fun mechanics in the game, and they put them both into one season. If the modifiers next season are worse than this season's, players might play less or even leave. Worse, the modifiers might be just objectively bad, and that might drive players away as well. I know we can still play without the modifiers, but when everyone seems to be getting a bit sick of the current content, with the modifiers being the only really new quote-unquote content, if we can call it that, players might skip the season entirely. Second, having to compensate and change how we play each season might be interesting, but it also might be a hard adjustment. Doing without critical recovery and microwave coils and fortified shield might be tough, especially if players finally broach content they haven't been able to complete before. Now, that legendary they've finally been able to complete might become out of reach again. Third, from a content creator's perspective, there becomes a dilemma. Do I show my builds with modifiers enabled or disabled? I run mine disabled because I want the build to be relevant beyond just this season. It's still possible, however, that nerfs or buffs to gear will make that build obsolete anyway, or even the next modifier will make it obsolete. Neither of these are outcomes that I can predict with any reliability. However, if I do make a build that has them enabled, sure, it'll be super relevant for this season, but it's pretty much guaranteed to be obsolete once it ends. Kind of the alternative to the modifier system would just be putting out new gear or brand sets, With these, at least there's some sort of staying power. Even though a set might get nerfed slightly, usually the mechanics stay roughly the same. Striker isn't suddenly going to give you microwave coils and set enemies on fire, for example. Gear sticks around, modifiers do not. Fourth, again, from a content creator's perspective, it's already hard enough to get everyone up to speed on the build system as it is. It's one thing to add a new gear set that a player doesn't have to use, it's a whole nother to have a new system stood up that now has the opportunity to confuse massive portions of the player base. Now in both 3 and 4, we could view it as actually a good thing for YouTubers. More content and more systems to explain is more opportunities for builds and guides on the modifiers. Maybe I'm just an outlier, but I take a while to script out my videos and I want them to actually contribute to have an impact. The impact doesn't have to be on a large amount of people, but I want my impact to be large even if it's only on a small amount of people. I want my videos to have staying power, not just be something that I throw out and it's irrelevant in a couple of weeks. Fifth, it throws off the balance of the gear and weapons in the game. Who wants to bother with the 6 skill tier skill build when you can focus on crits, get crit momentum and overdrive, and get an overcharged skill with 0 skill tiers this season? Why run anything besides Striker and a shield when you can get your Striker stacks almost 25% faster, your shield is invincible because of overcharge, and you can just set enemies on fire with your linked laser pointer as well? Maybe this is so the devs can kind of experiment with buffs and nerfs to different systems to see what works best. But if they're going to be changing modifiers every season, it's never going to be static and perfectly balanced. In order to push out something new, they're going to screw up the balance. If this was instead a new gear set, they'd be buffing or nerfing this set to bring it into balance, and then it just stays that way forever. With modifiers the way they are, it might be extremely hard to know if the new gear that comes with each season is actually balanced or not, because this will be thrown off by most of the player base playing with modifiers on. So essentially, modifiers are an external system that often supplants the gear system. Last season, we didn't even need damage on our builds. Blue builds were very common because we had so much damage from the modifiers. In the end, to me, it feels like a distraction. This game is all about building up your library, your proficiency, your skill, and your builds, and this just either completely negates your work for a whole season or makes something that already works for you just a little bit better. If the modifiers are good, we want them to stick around and become a permanent part of the game. If they're bad, we don't want them to stick around even for a whole season. They can completely trivialize a build and completely alter the meta. But because they're temporary, we can't ever inform the actual baseline balance of the gear and weapons in the game. So we're just kind of stuck in this weird limbo situation that runs counter to every other mechanic of the endgame. Here's hoping this season's modifiers get tweaked and balanced and just stay forever, or the whole system just gets scrapped in the next season. So that's all I got for this one, agents. Did I convince you? What do you think of the seasonal modifiers? Do you agree with my takes? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe, hit the bell, and check out our playlist to see the type of content you enjoy. If you liked this type of content, crush that like button like Keener's crushing on Mac. If you didn't, well, eat a Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry. And always remember, hydrate or die. And until next time, this has been Dispatch. Take care out there. There are some sims. Zip, 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 zip.
There are some sims. Zip, 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 zip.
Bother with the 6 skill tier build. Who wants to bother with the 6 skill tier build? 6 skill tier build.
6 skill tier build.